Hi class, this is Barb Price and I chose sample 3, A History of Instructional Media and Design, to be the one that was most helpful for me as a learner. I found it to be the most engaging, the one that after I stepped away, after looking at all 3, this was the one that I felt like I'd learned something and would remember some of the things that I found in it. One interesting fun fact that I found on this timeline was here in 1913. Thomas Edison thought that within a decade, film would replace books in the classroom. So that was particularly interesting to me because decades later, when I was in elementary school in the 1970s, it was a rare treat to watch an instructional film in school. We probably only saw a few films each year. We were still relying primarily on textbooks, good old textbooks. So that really brought home to me too, that along with the YouTube video we watched called This Will Revolutionize Education, how, whether it's films or PCs or the smart boards or the internet, none of those things can replace teachers, because the role of a teacher is to really motivate their students, find out what's challenging, keeping them from learning, inspiring them to want to learn and motivate them to learn, and finding the right tools for them. And that's, finding, and that along with that goes just the role of trying to find the right educational resources and tools and media and multimedia. So that was pretty cool. So why was this timeline the most helpful for me? It was easy to use. I could scroll through the timeline to find, to jump ahead and see what was progressing throughout the decades. I really like that feature. And also these tabs here were color coded. I went through the other interesting tidbits in red, kind of just went through and found some interesting things by just mainly looking at those first. And then of course I went back and looked at the instructional media and instructional design text boxes too. So I liked the way that it was engaging with the good use of graphics with the picture and the text, and then the ability to click on the more box and get more information too. It was super easy to use, allowing me to engage with the particular topics that were of the most interest to me. So it made me want to keep learning, keep scrolling through to see what other interesting tidbits would be coming up next. It was also the most visually pleasing. It lacked extraneous clutter, good use of graphics and layout. I like the black background, really made these text boxes pop. And I thought out of all 3 timelines, it was the most complete. It had the most information of all of them. Also, as I went through our assigned reading in Chapter 2, How Do People Learn from E-Courses, there was a table 2.3 on page 39. It included techniques for minimizing extraneous processing, managing essential processing, and fostering generative processing. And when I kind of held this timeline to the standards in this table, I found it did pretty well. So the first goal is to minimize extraneous processing, and this timeline followed the coherence principle. Do not use unneeded words, sounds, and graphics. I felt like everything on the page was useful and laid out in a very organized fashion that was easy to find what I was looking for. It didn't have extra clutter in there. And on the contiguity principle, not quite sure how to pronounce that, the printed words are placed right next to the corresponding part of the graphic. So you can see here with Ralph Tyler's behavioral objectives, right here's the text right next to his picture. So that was good. Another goal is to manage essential processing. So one technique is the segmenting principle. Break a continuous lesson into manageable parts. And this timeline does that very well, because I could go through and just look at just the red tabs, other interesting tidbits today, or I could, just look at the instructional design, or I could choose to look at just the decades from 1930s, 1940s, come back later, look at the 1950s and 60s, and so forth. So it's very easy to break it down into just manageable parts based on how much time I had to spend and what I wanted to focus on. So the final goal is to foster generative processing, and the personalization principle is to use conversational style rather than a formal style. And I think the ways that was achieved in this timeline was to use, these text box kind of looks. The way they used the color, I think, made it more informal, relaxed. The whole feel of it was, not too stiff and formal. It wasn't like this timeline here that I called the spider web of boring facts. So it was that I did not want to engage with that one at all. So I liked this one a lot better and felt like it was more personalized. Also, another goal or technique is the multimedia principle. Present words and graphics, and it made a really nice use of that. As you can see here, there's a good mix of graphics that went along with the topic next to the words with them. And the final technique would be the engagement principle. Ask learners to elaborate on the material. I did find myself, after I looked at this, saying, wanting to go share with someone, hey, did you know Thomas Edison thought film would replace textbooks in the classroom? And wanting, to tell people, different little interesting tidbits that I had learned as I went through here, like, hey, Mr. Potato Head was patented in 1952. Pretty cool, huh? So, in addition to that, as far as making changes, if I was going to make changes, of course, the first thing I would want to do is add more. It looks like it ended here in 2012, which is, I looked at it and looked like a PhD student made this timeline as part of an assignment. And it'd be cool if somebody was inspired to add on. I think there is a lot that could be added between 2012 and 2020. That would be good. In addition to that, though, there would probably be ways that audio could be added to this that would make it really nice, like rather than this text, if someone would want to listen to that, make an audio link for those. It might be another option. And I don't know if there would be any way to put this somehow consolidated or lay it out so that more of it could fit like on one page and you could see the big timeline squished down. I have no idea how you could do that, but I thought, it was a lot of scrolling to get from, 2008 to 2000, well, to the 1950s or whatever. So the other timeline, this one, the second sample, I thought actually was a better one. If you just wanted a quick overview, I just want the main highlights. And I will say this one did also have the interesting fact that Thomas Edison said books would soon be obsolete. So I thought that caught my eye actually in both of them. So what else do I want to tell you about this fabulous timeline? What more would I like to know about the history and uses of instructional media? Well, let me tell you, this is more than enough. I think this covers everything I ever wanted to know and more. But it's good to know that I have a resource if I ever want to come back and look through some of all of this. Obviously, I did not look at all of it, but it's here for me. I can always come back to it later. And the questions I do have currently relate more to current technology. In particular, how is mobile technology being used in the classroom, smartphones, tablets, in the most effective way to promote deeper learning? So I have more questions rather than about the history, but more about current and future use of how to best use some of our current technology to improve learning in the classroom settings. So thank you everyone for listening to my thoughts on this history of instructional media and design timeline. I look forward to hearing and seeing all of your presentations as well.